On March 8, 2014, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, a Boeing 777, mysteriously disappeared on its flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. 4 months later, after the most expensive search in aviation history, it has still not been found. According to authorities, radar contact was lost less than an hour after takeoff, and then strangely diverted its flight path west, away from its intended course, across the Malay Peninsula in the opposite direction. There has been no confirmation of a crash site or flight debris. Therefore, there is no evidence to suggest Flight 370 ever crashed in the first place. Many hypothesize, as does AMTV, that Flight MH17 was hijacked. Recent reports, buried by the mainstream media of course, support this theory. On June 30th, AMTV reported that new evidence had emerged that missing Flight 370's cockpit had been tampered with moments after takeoff from Kuala Lumpur. This was confirmed by a report released by Australian air crash investigators on June 29th. According to The Telegraph, the missing Boeing 777 suffered a mysterious power outage during the early stages of its flight, which experts believe could be part of an attempt to avoid radar detection. The report also concluded that the plane's satellite data unit made an unexpected log-on request to a satellite less than 90 minutes into its flight after takeoff, otherwise known in aviation as a handshake. A log-on request in the middle of a flight is not common, said the report. This was the conclusion of the Australian Transport Safety Bureau. The evidence provided by the independent investigation seems to suggest that this mysterious power outage shortly after takeoff was malicious in intent. David Gleave, an aviation safety expert, said the interruption to the power supply appeared to be the result of someone in the cockpit attempting to minimize the use of the aircraft systems. The action, he said, was consistent with an attempt to turn the plane's communications and other systems off in an attempt to avoid radar detection. A person could be messing around in the cockpit, which would lead to a power interruption, he said. It could be a deliberate act to switch off both engines for some time. By messing about within the cockpit, you could switch off the power temporarily and switch it on again when you need the other systems to fly the airplane. Inmarsat, the company that officially analyzed the flight data from MH370, also confirmed this assessment. So the evidence provided, according to an independent investigation by Australian authorities and Inmarsat, suggests that the plane's mysterious power outage right after takeoff was the result of malicious tampering with a Flight 370's cockpit. This would either mean that terrorists on board the plane, the pilots, or a remote controller hijacked and compromised the original flight path of MH370. Yet you'll barely hear any of this in the mainstream media. Now, just a few short 4 months later, we have a second plane. Coincidentally, another Malaysian Airlines flight, this time MH17. Another Boeing 777, allegedly shot down this time in Ukraine by Russian separatists. This, of course, all according to the mainstream media and Western governments. A couple red flags immediately emerge. How is it in just a few hours' time, the mainstream media and US government are able to confirm without a shadow of a doubt that Flight MH17 was shot down? Again, they still can't find Flight 370 after 4 months, but they've already immediately confirmed the outcome of MH17 and are already pointing a finger at Russian and Russia separatists as the likely culprit. There we go. Russia. That makes sense. Isn't it convenient timing that the US government can blame Putin within just a few hours' time of being responsible for the massacre of innocent civilians and the shooting down of MH17? This, of course, would provide the necessary smokescreen for the US government to aid pro-Western Ukrainian forces on the ground who have recently toppled Kiev's government and sell it as a humanitarian crisis to the public. Haven't we heard this before? Syria chemical weapons seems to ring a bell. Also, is it not possible that Flight MH17 was also hijacked? Could it be the second plane in 4 months' time compromised by terrorists? Do we know for sure that the plane was bombed by surface-to-air missiles, as is suggested by the mainstream media? Or could it have been blown up internally? Notable about the raw video footage first disclosed by the mainstream media shows no contrails from the sky, or for that matter a plane, just moments, frame by frame before impact. All we see is an explosion over a hill. Is that the hard evidence US authorities are using to confirm and blame Russian separatists for the downing of a commercial airliner in just a few hours? Is it also not strange that it is only Malaysia Airlines that seems to be plagued with mysteriously disappearing and shot down planes? It's almost like the mainstream media and Western governments have targeted Malaysia Airlines specifically as a scapegoat for the new Cold War with Russia. Also interesting about the timing of the alleged shot down plane of MH17 is the correlation with an abrupt ground invasion of Gaza by Israel. The same day flight MH17 is blasted all over the news and multiple conspiracy theories abound, Israel launches an aggressive ground war in Gaza. Like many of you, at least regarding the mainstream media, I don't believe in coincidences. So is it possible flight MH17 is a false flag? Could it be used by the West to attack Russia and also provide adequate cover for an invasion of Gaza by Israel? Notice just how days before flight MH17 and the Gaza ground invasion began, CNN broadcasters like Wolf Blitzer relocated to Israel for his daily broadcast. It's almost like CNN and other mainstream news outlets were tipped off about coming events before they even happened. More disgusting is that Israel officials are calling the ground war in Gaza an incursion, not an invasion. And the American people are buying it, hook, line, and sinker. Imagine for a minute what I'm telling you is the absolute truth. And two airliners, both Boeing 777s, both from Malaysia Airlines, were hijacked in the last 4 months by terrorists. What implications would this have? Still want to fly the friendly skies? And what motivation would the Russian government, Vladimir Putin himself for that matter, have in shooting down a civilian airliner over eastern Ukraine? Why would Putin or Russian separatists want to encourage Western intervention and provide ammunition, so to speak, to the US government? The only logical explanation would be that maybe, and I mean maybe, Russian separatists shot it down by accident. Although this is possible, it's not likely. More importantly, why was this plane even flying in a war zone in the first place? Does it not seem dumb and relevant that MH17 was flying over a known hostile environment? Were they trying to be shot down? Also strange is that according to news agency Interfax, Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 was traveling almost the same flight path as Russia's President Vladimir Putin's jet shortly before the crash. Could this have been an assassination attempt of Vladimir Putin? Why would pro-Russian separatists located in Russian-friendly eastern Ukraine shoot at Putin's presidential plane? You see, these are critical questions you won't get from the mainstream media, and most of the consuming masses, failing to do their own research due to laziness or just plain ignorance, won't ask. Here's what we know with absolute certainty. Flight MH370 still has not been found. It's been 4 months, and there is still no evidence to support that it crashed. Recent reports done by independent investigators conclude that the cockpit was tampered with shortly after takeoff. This suggests foul play. There was a mysterious power outage, the plane diverted from its known flight path, and it disappeared from radar. Flight MH17 crashed in eastern Ukraine today, on July 17. There is no evidence of contrails or images of an actual plane moments before impact. The US government and the mainstream media have already concluded within just a few short hours' notice, without doing any due diligence, that the plane was shot down. Yet they still haven't found Flight 370, and it's been 4 months. Israel just invaded Gaza with ground troops. This is what actually happened and is actually happening right now. This is bigger than politics, folks. Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, Jew or Christian. People are dying. Kids are being murdered in Gaza. Innocents aboard planes can't be found. And your government is lying to you. I'm Christopher Green. Get it out everywhere, hard-hitting it in your face, and click the link below to support our sponsor.